The last Gaza aid flotilla stopped at sea. Israeli commandos seize hundreds of activists, including Greta Thunberg and Mandla. Far-right Minister Ben Gvir mocks their mission, branding them terror supporters. Outrage spreads worldwide as questions mount. Was this law enforcement or a blatant violation of international law? The mission to break Israel's blockade on war-torn Gaza seems over. On October the 3rd, the Israeli forces intercepted the last boat from the Global Sumud Flotilla, carrying human aid for Palestinians caught in a war that has left more than 60,000 dead. A far-right Israeli minister, Ben Gvir, confronted the detained flotilla activists, mocking their aid initiative and accusing them of supporting terrorism.
These are the flotilla terrorists. These are the terrorists. They are terrorists. Look at them, supporters of the killers. By the way, their boats were a huge mess. They did not really come for the flotilla or aid, but they came for Gaza, for the terrorists. Those are terrorists. They support terror. What is in there? This is their boat. The police chief saw me and we talked about humanitarian aid. There is a bottle, one bottle of children's milk. I don't see anything here. Only a bottle of children's milk. Look at that. There is a mess. No aid and no humanitarian.
The last boat in the Global Sumud Flotilla, the Marinette, had been trailing behind the rest of the vessels and was still sailing on to the Palestinian territory in the early hours of Friday, a day after the Israeli Navy stormed 41 other boats and detained the activists, saying they would be deported. The flotilla, which was carrying a symbolic amount of humanitarian aid to Gaza, was the largest attempt so far to try and break Israel's blockade of the Palestinian territory that began after the incident of October 7, 2023. The flotilla's main goal was to establish a maritime corridor into Gaza amid Israel's blockade. Israel's interceptions started on the night of October 1st and continued through October 2nd, as boat by boat, every vessel was stopped off Gaza's shore, and the activists, including Greta Thunberg, Nelson Mandela's grandson, Mandla, and several European lawmakers, were detained. Rights groups have warned about the severe and inhumane conditions at Ketziot, a maximum security facility in the Negev desert notorious for harsh treatment. The detention of the activists in Ketziot has provoked widespread condemnation. Governments around the world have condemned Israel for sending commandos to board the Global Sumud Flotilla of about 40 vessels, which was carrying 500 activists and politicians, including Thunberg and Mandela, the grandson of Nelson Mandela. The interceptions of the flotilla boats and the arrest of the activists sparked demonstrations across continents, from Latin America to Asia. The detention has brought condemnation for Israel around the globe, and many are questioning what treatment awaits the detained activists. Reports suggest that dozens of activists taken off a flotilla of yachts in international waters by Israeli soldiers will be incarcerated at the notorious Ketziot prison in the Negev desert, where guards have been accused of violent treatment towards Palestinian inmates. After interception at sea, activists were transported to the Israeli port of Ashdod, where they underwent thorough inspection and identification by police, immigration officials, and prison authorities. This was followed by transfer to a detention facility, often Ketziot prison, which is noted for its severe conditions and typically used for large-scale detentions of Palestinians. A total of 470 activists were processed by more than 600 Israeli police officers, prison and immigration officials at Ashdod port by October 2nd evening. Some of those on the latest flotilla, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg, have been previously detained by Israeli authorities as they attempted to break the blockade. In the past, activists detained by Israel were not criminally prosecuted, and instead their presence was treated as an immigration matter. When Thunberg's previous flotilla was intercepted in June, she and 3 other activists signed deportation orders waiving the right to delay their removal for a period of 72 hours so they could appeal and were immediately ejected from the country. 8 other activists, among them French nationals, including Rima Hassan, a French member of the European Parliament who is participating in the latest flotilla, refused to sign the orders because they had never intended to enter Israeli territory but were forcibly taken to Israel by the authorities.
Now we know of at least 15 vessels en route to Ashdod port. Upon their arrival, they go through a process of identification and then they are moved to the responsibility of the immigration authority. There we step in, give them legal advice. Prior to any kind of hearings within the immigration authority, we are with them in the hearings in the immigration authority, and from there they are moved to Israeli prison. As a result of the procedure here in the port, we are expecting, as happened in the past, there will be issued deportation orders and custody orders, and then this is why they are moved to Israeli prison pending deportation. Our main concern at this stage, of course, their well-being, health condition, and as well making sure that they all get the legal advice prior to the hearings, during the hearings, in the immigration tribunal, and while maintained in Israeli prison.
As the activists were brought to Ketziot prison, the far-right minister Ben Gvir, who is accused of inciting violence and is vocal about ethnic cleansing in Gaza, gave a tour of the prison, flaunting that he fulfilled his promise.
We are in Ketziot prison, and as I promised, the prison staff, supporters of terror, are here in a security prison because those who play the games are receiving here the conditions of terrorists in every respect. Terrorist training, terrorist conditions. That is to say, there is the bare minimum of the minimum. That's how I promised, and that's how we exist now. Come on, let's go in and see them.
He accused the flotilla participants, who come from more than 40 countries, of supporting terrorism, and aboard one of the seized boats, mocked the activists' aid initiative. Hundreds of police officers were deployed to Ashdod as Israel marked Yom Kippur, one of the holiest days of the Jewish calendar, to handle the detentions of the activists. Israel had repeatedly criticized the flotilla and accused some members of links to Hamas while providing little evidence. Activists have strongly rejected the accusations. The Israeli Navy had earlier warned the activists via radio to turn back, as they risked what the Israeli Navy termed entering an active war zone.
This is the Israeli Navy. You are approaching a blockaded zone. If you wish to deliver aid to Gaza, you may do so through the established channels. Please change your course toward the port of Ashdod, where the aid will undergo a security inspection and then be transferred into the Gaza Strip.
The question the detentions still raise is the legality of the detentions. Was Israel within its rights to stop the activists carrying the aid? Or was it another blatant violation of international law? The activists said their non-violent civilian mission is lawful. While they acknowledged they carried only a symbolic amount of aid, including baby formula, food, and medical supplies, they said their goal is to establish a humanitarian corridor to facilitate the flow of aid into famine-stricken Gaza. Israeli and European government officials had proposed alternative ways for the flotilla to deliver the aid, but the activists refused, arguing that Israel's strict control over Gaza's borders would prevent the supplies from reaching those in need. Defending their mission, flotilla activist and spokesperson Tiago Avila said,
"Take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip."
The UN Convention on the Law of the Sea stipulates that a nation's territory does not extend beyond 12 nautical miles from its shores. The convention says authorities may exercise control up to 24 nautical miles from land to prevent violation of customs, immigration, fiscal or sanitary laws. The interception of the Global Sumud Flotilla by Israel is widely regarded as illegal under international law, as it was about 4270 nautical miles from Gaza's coast. Robbie Sabel, an international law expert and former legal advisor to the Israeli Foreign Ministry, says,
States generally do not have the right to seize ships in international waters, though there are exceptions, including during armed conflict.
He argued that even before the current war, Israel was already engaged in an armed conflict with Hamas, which, in its view, gave it the legal right to intercept ships suspected of violating its long-standing blockade of Gaza. However, human rights groups have long criticized the blockade, calling it an unlawful form of collective punishment against the Palestinian population.